From the center of the universe and the home of your Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos podcast. Ben Grant, joined as always by JB. We've got a really busy lineup tonight. Not only do we have the Double Blue Scrimmage to talk about, we've got the new uniform release that happened today. We got to talk about that. Plus, we've got real football, JB. We are previewing a preseason matchup, Toronto at Hamilton. So we've got all the usual stuff, OCDC, one thing, predictions, all that more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. JB, before we get into the heart of our podcast, I've got exciting news to share about our title sponsor, Something in the Water Brewing. You've heard me rave about Longboat Pale Ale, the beer made especially for fans of the Double Blue, the beer inspired by Toronto right guard Darius Bladek. Well, we have a release date, folks. Longboat Pale Ale is going to be launched for Father's Day with a big barbecue celebration, and it couldn't be more perfectly timed because Father's Day is also the day of the Argos home opener against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and Something in the Water is in Liberty Village, just steps from BMO Field. So here's the plan for everybody. You've got to, first of all, make sure you've got your tickets to the Argos home opener. That's step one. And then you're going to get down to Liberty Village a few hours before the game, enjoy some of the best beer in the world, get yourself a bite to eat while you're at it. It's a new season for the Double Blue, and it is a new season for the Double Blue flagship beer of summertime, the Longboat Pale Ale. Which, you know, couldn't be timed better. Releasing Longboat Pale Ale the same day as the Argos home opener. I love it. So, JB, we'll have to get ourselves down there and grab some Longboat Pale Ale and store up enough to make sure that it lasts through the year as well. So, I got to do some purchasing for sure.
Yeah,
JB,
sounds great.
What's that?
That sounds great. Good timing.
Yeah.
Father's Day.
Yeah, no, exactly. I know, perfectly timed. I should get my dad down there too. I think he would love that. So we definitely have to set that up. He would never leave is the problem, so I wouldn't be able to get him to the game. But we'll see what we can do. JB, we got a scrimmage to talk about. You and I were in Guelph yesterday watching the Double Blue Scrimmage. What do you think? Like, overall impressions? What was your initial thought, kind of heading out of the stadium yesterday?
I felt the team looked like a team that was pretty confident in who they are. They went through things pretty quickly. Didn't replay things. You know, we're sort of tinkering with things, and we're happy to run through different scenarios. But it struck me as a very confident team, a team that knows what it wants to do and is kind of, you know, not going through the motions, but is going through things quickly and efficiently because they know that they're ready for the next level of install and preparation. So that's certainly encouraging. That was certainly the vibe I felt. Was nobody got as excited as maybe other years we've seen, and I think that probably is a sense of you know, that it's a team that's just kind of working through what has to be done, and it's not as much. It's a little more workmanlike, I guess, if you would.
Yeah, I like that. I like that comment. I hadn't thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. We've seen this game over the last couple of years where you have a lot of celebrating, hooting, hollering, high-fiving, running down the field, and that wasn't happening in this game. It was a team taking care of business. It was doing their job. This is what we've got to do. And that speaks to their expectations. This is not a team that should get excited about scoring a touchdown in a Double Blue game. This is a team that should get excited about winning a Grey Cup. And that's the level that you got from there, which, again, we've seen that sometimes, you know, those midseason practices where we see them laser focused. It reminded me a little bit of that. But again, it took you saying that for me to realize that this was very much a team that's taking care of business. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I've got an article on 3 Down Nation where I broke down each positional group and some things I saw from each group. We're not going to go through each positional group here, but I do want to highlight some of, I think, what we saw as being really important notes to take away from yesterday, JB. Quarterback position. Let's start there. That's what everyone wanted to ask about. Like as soon as the game was done, people wanted to know what we thought about the quarterback play. So I guess I'll give you my thoughts first. I'd love to hear what you took away from Chad Kelly's performance for starters, but also from who we sort of perceived to be the backup. So Chad Kelly, he looked great. Numbers wise, you're always going to, because remember, it is a scrimmage. It's not an exhibition game. There is a difference. You are still wearing your red jersey, which means you're off limits. Defenders can't touch you. You're left alone. And that provides a level of comfort in the pocket that you don't get with preseason. So Chad Kelly ended up, finishing the day by completing 10 of 12 passes. That's terrific. Would he have completed 10 of 12 in a scrimmage or in an exhibition game? Probably not. But 10 of 12 for 139 yards. That's a pretty nice outing that he had. He had 2 touchdown passes, a 20-yarder to Lonnie Moore IV, who we'll talk about a bit more later, and also a short 1-yard touchdown pass to Curly Gittens Jr. I think the takeaway for me and what made me feel comfortable with his performance was that he just looked like he was going through the routine. He didn't look new. He didn't look rattled by anything. He looked like he was running an offense that he was very familiar with. He looked like he was throwing to guys he was very familiar with. I was really pleased to see that the relationship that he's really forged in training camp with DeVaris Daniels stood out as a guy he was really comfortable throwing to, as well as some of the new faces he's got there. And obviously he's played a lot with Curly Gittens Jr. too. He just looked like a guy that has been playing quarterback for the Argos for a while. And I think to me, more than anything else, more than the arm strength, more than being able to weave it into tight spaces the way that he does, it was his level of comfort in doing it that put me at ease. What about you?
Yeah, I was happy. He certainly looked better than he did last year. I thought last year he looked a little more frantic. He looked calmer in the pocket. If I wanted to get nitpicky, did I feel like a couple times he seemed a little happy-footed in the pocket? I thought a couple times he did. He threw some terrific seam, like a seam deep hook passes. He's got tons of arm, and I love those. I love that pass. He gets it right in there. He can run that middle of the field stuff because he can rocket it in there. Which is what you need on those inside the hash mark passes. So I really like seeing that. Couple of deep passes were probably bad decisions into double coverage. But on the whole, I was happy. I'm probably a harder person to convince. I thought there was still he didn't look like McLeod, I think, but nor should he. I mean, he is not a 10-year veteran running through camp. He's going to look like a young quarterback from time to time. That's just something Argo fans are going to have to be happy with. But love the arm strength, and I like the reads. I liked his energy. You can feel when he's on the field that he is QB1, that kind of intangible, which is really nice to see. I don't know how you quantify it, but he definitely has that, and I think the team reacts to that. So that was great to see.
The thing I'm still not used to is the arm strength. Like, I know we've watched him for a year at practice, and it's not like McLeod Bethel Thompson didn't have a cannon as well. McLeod's got an arm, but Chad Kelly's arm is just different. There have been a couple. I wasn't so much. There were a couple of passes actually. That one to DeVaris was just a rope. But there've been a few in camp where I've been watching. There was one. Argos were running sort of a variation of dagger concept where you've got the inside receivers running a seam, and outside receivers got a deep dig, and it was against zone coverage, and the receiver coming from the outside was settling into this void between two defenders. And I saw it developing, and I was watching the receiver make the break, and I was thinking, oh, there it is. And I was waiting for Chad to throw it. But Chad's first read was to the opposite side of the field, and he worked his way back. And I thought to myself, oh, that's too bad. It's too late now. But then Chad threw it anyway, and I immediately reacted with sort of a cringe, like, oh no, you can't throw it this late. It's going to get picked. But it turns out you can throw it that late when you can throw it 100 miles an hour, because he did work it in. So he found it late. I thought it was too late to throw it. He didn't think it was too late to throw it, and he just got it past the defender's hand, completed the pass to the receiver. And there's going to be moments like that where we all hold our breath collectively and then celebrate the fact that he was able to complete the pass. But there are going to be some that he just misses as well, where they're going to end up going the other way, where there are going to be mistakes. And that's the nature of having a gunslinger at quarterback. Like you're saying, having a guy like Chad Kelly, he will bring more excitement to the position than we saw last year, but he will also have us pull out our hair more frequently too. So
yeah, he definitely looked better than last year, which is great to see. He looked absolutely in control of the offense. I might nitpick a few things, but I would have to say, from watching that practice, I was happy with his performance, and so I think that's the takeaway for me.
The backup job's interesting because we've talked about how the Argos decided not to bring in a veteran to back up Chad Kelly this year. And again, I support that decision. I think that's correct. I do believe if something is to happen to Chad, knocking on wood here, but if something is to happen to Chad, I do believe they would trade for a veteran. I think that's when you'd see a deal made for someone like Dan Evans. But I think it's correct to go forward like this. And we could see the talent. Now, Ben Holmes, Brian Scott, Cameron Dukes, the other quarterbacks out there, none of them are there yet. They don't even quite, they're not even quite at number 2 yet, but I'm not really worried about that. I do think that will come. Holmes has got such a good arm, and he's still a split second late. Not with every pass. He made some beautiful reads, beautiful passes. I think his film, actually, I thought, is going to end up looking better from yesterday than what I've seen for the majority of camp. And I would say for Scott too, he had one of his best days, because he's had some rough camp practices as well. And he strung a really nice 2-minute drive together on Sunday, I guess it was, and then followed that up yesterday with a really nice performance at the Double Blue Scrimmage. So I think they're in a fine position. I'm not at a point now where I'm comfortable with those guys going in yet, but I do think it's an interesting battle. In preseason, that's going to be one to watch, because one of those guys is going to separate himself and be the backup to Chad Kelly. Let's talk a little bit about. We'll stay on the offense for a minute. We'll get to your D in a bit, JB. But let's talk about Lonnie Moore IV. He had a day yesterday. There aren't official stats for this. I did some stat recording. I'll post my full stat list on xsandArgos.com if you wanted to take a look at what I had down for statistics. But for Lonnie Moore IV, 6 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown. He kind of came out of nowhere for me. I've seen him in camp. I watched film on him when the Argos signed him. That was a pretty early one. I feel like that was back. I think that was at the end of last season. I think it was December last year. And Monmouth University. I wasn't expecting him to be anything other than a kick returner. That's what I thought he was. He's not a big guy. He had some success returning the football really fast, got great moves. First of all, I did not expect him to be out there with the starters yesterday. And I absolutely did not expect him to be leading the way in catches and yardage. He looked like he looked ready to go, eh?
Yeah, he doesn't blow you away. He looks like a professional receiver. Like he was in the right spot, and the quarterback clearly liked him, and he made the catches. So he's not eye catching, but that's not what he's trying to be the 5th or 6th receiver on this team. So I think you're looking for somebody who can do that, like who can, be a great route runner, and when get open, they catch the ball and they're moving the chains. So yeah, like he doesn't blow you away like, oh, that's a star, but he caught every ball they threw to him.
Yeah, and they had him playing the boundary slot, which it makes me really happy, because you remember last year I went on and on every podcast about how I wanted DeVaris Daniels playing out wide, because DeVaris he didn't, he was being a team player, but I asked him specifically about whether or not he likes being outside or inside. he made it pretty clear he prefers being on the outside. And so, and you could see it in his play. He's just a much better receiver on the outside. He's not a slot receiver. Some guys just aren't. And Eric Rogers was supposed to be the boundary slot last year. He never really played. And so Tavares got kicked inside for most of the season. A couple games where Ambles played in the slot. I think Phillips played one in the slot, allowed Tavares to be outside. And that's where he looked at home. And that's where he had his best games. So for them to be putting more in the slot, I think is really encouraging too. Now he couldn't profile any more differently than Eric Rogers, who's a giant out there. This is a very different philosophy. Lonnie Moore, he's listed at 5'10", 175. I don't think he's all of either of those numbers, but it doesn't matter. He's comfortable over the middle. He made some really nice catches in traffic. He settles in space so nicely too, and that's something that a lot of American receivers really struggle with. They don't have the instinct right away. In the States, because the field is so much smaller, crisp route running is really what it's all about. Like, that's how you get space. In the CFL, it's a little bit different. Like, being a crisp route runner helps, obviously. But having an instinct for where that void begins and where it ends is huge. And there's some guys that just never get that. And they're great route runners, and you see them going 100 miles an hour, and they look at other guys around the league and say, well, how does this guy? I'm twice as fast as him. I run tighter corners than this guy. How come he's always open? You think if you're Ben Cahoons, that just guys that for years could just find space in a heartbeat. And that was something that, I'm not comparing him to Ben Cahoon, but looking at Moore yesterday, he was really good at finding space. So I've got really high hopes for him. It's one day, it's one scrimmage. Let's see how he looks in preseason, but he's definitely the number one guy I've got my eye on heading into the preseason matchup against Hamilton. JB, let's talk about actually, before we get to the D, I just want to share the frustration with our listeners, the frustration of watching a scrimmage with you, because on every play, you claim that the quarterback is sacked.
He was.
It's so frustrating.
It was an absurdity. They're like, no, that's fine. No, that's fine. Like, sack.
Yeah, touching a guy's jersey on your way by is not the same as a sack. But yeah, every nice completion, I'm like, oh, that was a nice throw. JB's like, no, sack.
How about getting down into the crouch and flexing your arms?
Yeah,
before the ball was thrown.
That happened once, and I think the throw gets out before he gets hit. He would have taken a hit. He would have been throwing.
Yeah, there were at least 3 big passes that were sacks from where I sat.
No, JB's stat sheet probably had like 12 sacks for the defense.
Look,
but
the guy in the backfield, that's a sack. You don't get to stand in the pocket as the defender rests beside you in the backfield.
Sometimes you take a hit as you're throwing the ball. That's part of it. It's just that we're not following through on that. But where Chad's going to stand in the pocket, he's going to deliver the ball, and right as he releases it, he's going to get clocked. And that's going to happen. It's just, you don't need to reenact the hitting part of that in the scrimmage. But yeah, we saw that.
I understand they want to see the quarterback throw the ball, so that's fine. But I would say I definitely had more sacks than were called.
The defense will agree with you too, because I know being in defensive film rooms, all of them are like, "Oh, that's a sack. I had 7 sacks." That's how they're calling it. So let's talk about that defense. Who stood out for you the most? It was weird, right? Because, I mean, we're never going to get to defense at this rate, but just one last thing I do want to say. I thought we saw some things that I didn't expect to see in a scrimmage, like the touchdown to AJ Ouellette, his rushing touchdown. That's a running play I haven't seen the Argos run before. It was interesting. There's creativity, and normally stuff's a little bit more vanilla in a scrimmage. And I think that speaks to what you were saying before, as to this team being more experienced than we've seen in years past. They were a few weeks ahead of where they'd normally be in install, because we saw some pretty cool stuff. We saw a little bit of it on defense, not so much from the linebacker level, but we saw them playing around in the secondary, and that was kind of cool to see. What do you think of Robertson, Daniel, and Priester? That combo on the boundary side they were playing around with.
Looked great. I mean, Daniel especially, in terms of. He looked fast. They looked big. Sometimes the secondary can seem a bit smaller. I was really happy with how the secondary looked. I thought that they didn't do anything very exotic, but we're always in position. There were no busts. We're always in a position to make the play. Brought the heat a couple of times on blitzes, which looked good in terms of the timing, which is pretty good this early. I thought that Daniel especially stood out to me in the secondary.
That halfback
I
blitz
liked
was sweet at the goal line.
What's that?
The halfback blitz at the goal line,
Yeah,
where
gorgeous.
you could see him creeping in.
To time that, like, that is so hard to have a delayed blitz that doesn't actually come late. It was gorgeous. Gorgeous instinct, gorgeous timing.
And the importance of the timing on that, just for listeners that don't know, that maybe don't understand what we're talking about, why that's such a big deal. If you're blitzing from the secondary and you're late, you're basically playing a man short on that play. So if you're sending a safety blitz or a halfback blitz, corner blitz, and you don't time it well, and you don't actually generate any pressure, then you've basically just taken yourself out of the play.
Oh, that also made me think of our argument where there was the hospital ball that you felt was a very good deep catch.
Yeah, but again, it's a contested catch. There's a couple.
I think you'd be contesting would be who's paying the hospital bill.
This is not 1970 where guys are just going to come in and helmet to helmet you into the grave. Okay. That's not what was happening here. There were contested catches, and yeah, like JB next to me, like, oh, that's never going to be completed in a game.
No, the safety was the safety would have annihilated him.
You take a hit, and they know that. Like, receivers going over the middle, they know they're taking a shot, but it's that's not. Again, we have a different read on that.
Who else did I like? I liked Marion. I thought Benoit Marion looked really good. I thought he looked fast. I thought he looked really active on the line. I was really happy to see that. He they've got there were a bunch of guys that were out, so he was getting a few more starter reps than normally he does, and he popped a couple of times. I thought he looked quick. I thought he looked strong. I thought he looked nice in run support. So maybe he can fight his way into the rotation a little bit. I know he's obviously a superb special teams player, but he certainly caught my eye a couple of times. And what else did I enjoy? I enjoyed the defense picking up the running back. Took me a second to figure out. I've never seen a defender pick up a running back off the ground after hitting him.
Yeah, but again, to bring out my offensive view on this, that you like running plays in this format, the whistles are blown so early, which is what the referees are told to do. They don't want players taking hits. The coaches don't want to see that. But like some of these run plays, like I felt so bad for McMahon, who had 2 carries, and I think I had him at -2 yards. These aren't tackles. He's not getting tackled all just because they can touch his jersey. They blew the whistles on his before contact, right before he's about to make a juke move. Andrew Harris got blown dead, I think, on his 1 carry, as I recall.
Well, I don't think the defense was expecting Harris to be in there, and I think Pickett blew him up almost on contact from the handoff, and quickly picked him up. So I think that's a nice show of respect for Harris.
But it's just not the style of play that suits the running game. And they called quite a few running plays because they want to see the execution. They want to see the blocks on the line. They want to see the path. They want to see the mesh point. They're trying to make sure all of that is in order. But the result of the play you can't really look at. So the rushing stats really don't matter that much. Like AJ Ouellette was the leading rusher, but that stuff's kind of meaningless. I was more impressed with him as a receiver. He was used a few times as an outlet. And I thought Kelly did a really nice job of getting the ball out early to backs instead of it sort of being a last ditch thing and a back taking a 3-yard loss on a pass. When you see him in man coverage, especially getting an edge, and getting out wide before his defender, hitting him early. I thought those were some nice reads were made on those plays too. So that was cool.
I think my last guy, and hopefully it's not the kiss of death, sometimes happens on these pods where we trumpet somebody and then you can time the release tweet coming out the next day. But I really liked Quantez Stiggers.
Yeah,
I thought he looked strong. I thought he looked the part, and was great on press, physicality. I think that's something the secondary doesn't necessarily have a ton of. I know he is raw, but I'd be shocked if they didn't try and get him onto their practice squad, because it's just one of those things. You can, a coach can just tell you like 10 seconds in when somebody has elite athleticism, and he does. It screams off him elite athleticism. So if Coach Bell can get him plugged in, I think he is a project, but I hope that they keep him.
Yeah, I'm really excited about him too. He's, like you said, like the athleticism is, and the fact that he's playing at this, like never having played a snap of college ball, and that he's not only is he not lost, he actually looks really good. And there are little moments where you're like, okay, I there's going to be this that we got to work on, this we got to work on. It's not going to take that long. If you get him on the practice squad for a little while, I could absolutely see him working his way into the roster. There's a couple guys like in the secondary. I think we kind of feel like, Priester and Robertson Daniel are the answer for the departed Shaq Richardson and Jamal Peters. But as we know from last year, you can't just go in with those guys. There's going to be turnover. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be issues. And so having a guy like Stiggers, Keith Washington also is another guy. He was wearing 28 yesterday. I thought, he's a guy that has shown some promise throughout camp. They've got a bunch of really good potential players in that group, kind of like what we found last year, the guys that were discovered throughout the season, like Priester, like Carnell the Fourth, guys that weren't really looked at much preseason, and then suddenly they were needed, they were called upon, and they performed well. So the real possibilities. All right, JB, let's get into the new uniforms. So the new uniforms launched today with an epic video, Argo players bursting out of the water, revealing the Cambridge blue jersey and pant combo to go with the Cambridge blue helmet, and also the all white to go with the Cambridge blue helmet. Initial reaction, JB, what do you think?
Yeah, my initial reaction is I love them. I love the color. I think that the design is slick. You can tell from the player reactions; they're into it. It's great to see. I love a fresh coat of paint, and they didn't. Like it doesn't look like something that was made up in an advertising marketing lab. Looks like football was involved in the design of these, and they're not too much, and they're not. Because look, to me, I think anytime you have a uniform release and it's not a punchline, you have to be very happy, because we all know around the league in both the NFL and the CFL, sometimes uniforms get released and it's a no. So the fact that it was not a no, I think is a win. And then on top of that, I think they look really sharp. I think the swag looks great. The hoodies and the t-shirts, and the uniforms and the helmet look good. I think it was. I think that's a win for the department.
I have a problem with the uniform. So
Why?
This is, it's me. It's not the uniform. It's me, and I know that. This is me being an old man, and I don't like when the jersey and the pants are the same color. And I don't care what color it is. I don't like BC's black jersey, black pants combo, or Hamilton's black jersey, black pants combo. Montreal does their blue jersey, blue pants combo. I don't like it. I don't like when I want contrast. Like my favorite Argos jersey from last season, or favorite uniform combo, was when they went with the Oxford blue jersey, like the dark blue jersey with the Cambridge blue pants. Like that looks great. And so for me, who wants to see that contrast, I love everything about the jersey. And I'm going to detail a couple of things that are really cool details. That's not a great sentence, but in a minute. The problem I have is I think that jersey should be the Oxford blue, not the Cambridge. It should be the dark blue. And if you leave everything else the same design, same details on the jersey, but the dark blue jersey with the Cambridge blue pants, Cambridge blue helmet, it doesn't even matter what color socks you put on, I think that would be a winner. But everyone else I've asked, my kids think it's the greatest uniform they've ever seen. The players love the uniform. Everyone I asked about the uniform today loved the uniform. A couple exceptions, and they're mostly older guys like me that don't like the matching thing, because we think it looks like pajamas. But that's, we're wrong because the majority of people really do like it.
Sometimes the matching doesn't work. Like it's like the NFL Color Rush games where you had the Jets that looked like Gumby, and then you had the Bills that looked like a ketchup bottle. And for sure, sometimes the shirt pant combo looks ridiculous, but I don't think so here. I think that this looks sharp.
The details that are pretty cool. So first of all, saying all together on the inside of the collar, pull together on the inside of the collar, the slogan I think is really neat. The shoulders, so a lot of people have compared it to like the Oregon Ducks shoulder, and what it actually is are oars. So you've got 6 oars on one shoulder, 6 oars on the other shoulder. So it's representing the 12 players on the field, everyone pulling together. That's the nod to their history, their heritage, which the whole uniform is, right? Like when I interviewed Hoagie a couple of weeks ago on this pod, he talked about the fact that this wasn't rushed into. This is years in the making, coming up with this uniform for the 150th. So this is not just like, hey, let's just throw this out there. Like you said, like the marketing lab, like this is thinking very carefully about it. And you've got that symbolism. The stripe down the pant, which looks really cool, isn't really a stripe. It's actually an oar as well, which is neat. There's a really cool detail on the photos they put out. If you look at AJ Ouellette's like stomach, if you zoom in on it, you see these little laser pinpricks, ventilation across the stomach, and that is in a wave as well, sort of continuing the nautical theme. Everything about the uniform, everything about the helmet is thought through and thematic. It's for a reason, not just random, hey, this will look cool. And that part I like. And the fact that it ties back to the 1950s, 60s Argos, where you're using that Cambridge blue. So overall, I think it's cool. Not perfect in my opinion, but I know that my opinion is by far the minority. Most people love this thing. JB, it is time for us to start talking about a football game. Toronto at Hamilton at Tim Hortons Field, 4:00 this Saturday afternoon. What do you do, first of all? Because you and I have argued about this before. Who do you send out there? Like, what's your mentality coming into this game in terms of players you start, you sit? What do you have?
For me, nobody.
What do you mean? Like nobody plays?
You have 2 preseason games. I wouldn't send any starters out in this game. I think you're looking at the bottom 6 of your roster and practice squad, and I would essentially send them out to take a look at what they look like, on the field and get a sense of who your bottom 6 are going to be and who has practice squad potential. You don't need to see your starters. You don't need to see them run any plays. I just think the need for preseason is a little bit antiquated. Just the way install goes now, and the amount of class time and the amount of work that's done to learn the plays and what's done in practices. I just don't see exhibition being very purposeful in 2023. So I wouldn't have any starters. I would just have your bottom 30 guys going out there and see if 1 or 2 of them pop.
And I disagree completely with that philosophy. I think I get it. And I think if you were bringing back McLeod Bethel-Thompson and otherwise didn't really have many changes, I could see that argument a little bit more, but I still don't like it. Like, look, you've got 85 guys on the roster plus non-counters. You've got so many guys that already, even at this stage, these guys aren't going to be. They're not going to be with the team at this point. Like a lot of these decisions, I have to believe, have been made to a degree. I don't think you need to see all 100 guys on the football field. I think the value of a preseason game, it's not like there are 4 or 5 preseason games. There's just 2. And a long season ahead of you. I get not wanting to risk injury, but that's a risk you have to take every time you put on a uniform. That's a risk every practice you go out there. You're putting players at risk to some degree. I think you just have to stomach that risk because what's more important is developing chemistry, developing a routine, in order not to get out to a slow start, because we've seen how a slow start, look at Hamilton last year, got off to a slow start. It crushed them. They never really were able to fight their way back, end up, barely making the playoffs and really not being in a position to beat Montreal because of the uphill battle they faced. And I think you just have to, with a new quarterback, especially a quarterback doesn't have as much experience like Chad Kelly, I need him out there. I don't need him to play a whole quarter or a half or anything like that. I need him out there for a series or two. Get to the routine, get all your starters out there for a couple series, see what it looks like, and then you can start rolling in guys after that. Because I do agree, there's some important decisions that have to be made after that. And you want as much time for
to me, that's
the other
game 2.
QBs.
That's the first half of game 2. You don't need to do it twice.
And I think you do it both times. And I get the argument, like so often you see with road games, you just fire in all the backups and you save your starters for your home game. But I just think that's a mistake here because there's new pieces and really important new pieces. You've got to have more time because all you've got otherwise with Chad Kelly, all you've got is that you've got the meaningless game against Montreal last year. You've got the Grey Cup, which was, again, went extremely well. You've got the scrimmage was that yesterday? I don't even know what day of the week it is. Yes, that went extremely well, but we need more. This is just not a lot on the resume, and I want him to face more adversity, and I want him to get hit a couple of times. I think that's an important part of this too. I don't want him to get hurt, but I want him to take a couple of hits. I want him to throw under pressure and feel the urgency of those reads in 2 preseason games, not just one. So that would be my philosophical difference. I think Coach Dinwiddie is going to see it more the way you do, just knowing the type of coach he is. I think he's going to be torn because he's going to want to win this game because he does. Like, that's how he's wired. But I think he's going to be more like you, and I wouldn't be surprised if Chad Kelly doesn't play or doesn't throw a pass, one of the two. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. They haven't announced anything as of yet. We'll probably see that come out shortly, or maybe we find out on game day that he's not playing or playing in a limited fashion. But if it were me, I'd do it differently. All right, JB, it is time for everybody's favorite segment. It's OCDC. This season, OCDC is brought to you by the Business Barbershop and Spa. The Business Barbershop and Spa invites you to experience Etobicoke's premier licensed men's grooming lounge for hair, face, and body care. They're celebrating 10 years in the Kingsway. And there's a deal going on too. The first 50 clients who book a service will be entered into a draw to win a $200 gift card. Just mention Argo's All About the Business. Argo's All About the Business. When you book a service, you'll get entered into that draw. And I can't speak highly enough about the business. It's an amazing place to go. It's where I get my hair cut. You can get shaves too, which I've done before, and that is the most relaxing thing ever. The hot towel, the shave, the haircut. You leave that place feeling like $1 million. And they've got spa services there too. I've had the scalp massage, which is out of this world. So yeah, you need a haircut, you need a shave, you want to get taken care of properly. You got to check out the business, and don't forget Argo's All About the Business to enter that draw. JB, for our new listeners, we better bring people up to speed on OCDC. So, JB, you've served as a defensive coordinator for years. I've been an offensive coordinator for years. This segment, while different in preseason, is designed to have us kind of look at how we would attack both teams, for me offensively, for you defensively. So, for this preseason tilt, it's going to be a little bit more formulaic than usual, but I'll start it off. So let's start off with the bad guys. We'll look at the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So as the OC of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, I'm really not trying to beat Toronto schematically per se, because I don't want to do that. I'm not trying to, I don't want to spill my candies in the lobby in a preseason game, knowing that the Argos and Ticats have to play 17 times this season. You don't want to start it off by showing your cards, but you do need to establish a few things. So like I said in the preamble, I do think I would have Bo Levi Mitchell 100% playing. And I think he needs to just as much as Chad Kelly needs to. He didn't have a great season last year, certainly not to his standard. He's with an entirely new team. He needs to be out there. And what I want to do as Hamilton is I want to make him comfortable. I want to go with the concepts that he's felt most comfortable with in camp. I want to get him some completions. He's not going to be out there long. I might play him half a quarter, and I want him just making easy reads that he's been making his entire life. Have short floods, short zone beaters, take the easy completion, take checkdowns, that's fine. Exit the game 5 of 5 for 35 yards. That's great. I've achieved everything I want to achieve. That's my offensive plan for Hamilton. It's not exciting, but I think getting Bo Levi Mitchell into a level of comfort and the fan base into a level of comfort after they've had some questionable quarterback play, I think is huge. Because if it goes the other way, if Bo Levi Mitchell doesn't play in preseason and starts slow, people are going to be pushing that panic button really fast in Hamilton. You know they are. And so I think it's important right away, get the whole team on board with this. Yeah, things are fine. It's going to be okay. Bo's here. That's my offensive plan for Hamilton. How are you looking at Hamilton defensively, JB?
Well, I would probably do the exact same thing for both defensive coordinators. I can't really speak for Hamilton, but in this case, I'm staying in base the whole game. I want to see how our base looks, what plays give our base problems, and we can look at that. But I want to just run with, probably some kind of man-to base coverage that you're running. You want to stay as vanilla as possible. You don't want to give away anything. So from a defensive point of view, you're just looking at mainly tackling. It's almost like an hour-long tackling drill. Like from a defensive coordinator point of view, you're really just interested in how well do people tackle, how well do they close, how well do they follow through on their tackles. Maybe throw in some man coverage to see if that's a tool you have. Can we hold up to man coverage? That's basically it. I would, from my perspective as defensive coordinator, I'm not interested in anything other than how aggressive and how well people hit, and how well can we hold up in man coverage if we switch to it. And other than that, it's largely a waste of time for the defense preseason.
And I see it sort of differently. Because I think I get what you're saying, and I completely understand that philosophy. But I would want to run through, no, I'm not saying exotic stuff. I'm not saying you're running all sorts of weird twists and delayed blitzes or anything like that. But I would want to really cycle through my cover 2s and 3s and 4s and just basic versions, not anything that the other coordinator is going to be writing down and saying, oh, that's interesting what they're doing here. That's not the plan there. But I think I want to see how my guys react to just very simple diagnosing of space, especially because you got so many guys playing on a new sized field. So I would want to run some of that. But I get what you're saying. The danger of showing too much, even if it's basic, is if you can't do it. And now suddenly you've highlighted something. Hey, this guy's really struggling with this. When we play each other in a couple of weeks' time, why don't we target him with this, and this? So I get what you're saying. Now, if we shift back to the good guys now and look at the Argonauts offense, my plan for the offense, again, if I have things my way, Chad Kelly's going to be out there, and I'm going to run it very similar to what I said for Bo Levi, where you go conservative, you complete some passes, you keep him standing. You don't want to get him rocked. I don't mind him getting hit, taking some contact, but I don't want him getting annihilated or anything like that. I'm not doing deep drops or looking for third and fourth reads. I'm getting the ball out fast. But I changed this up now for when you get in Holmes and Scott, especially. I'm not sure I'm putting Cameron Dukes in the same conversation at this point. I think it's Holmes and Scott for the backup job, and I really want to see them push the ball downfield. I want to see, almost like we saw with the scrimmage where they did situational stuff, I want to see them run some hurry up. I want to see them launch the ball downfield. I want to see them try and take advantage of high lows on the safety. I want to see that kind of stuff, maybe showing more than I'm even comfortable showing, because I think it's important to see which one of those guys steps up, because it has been Holmes's job all throughout camp. And for me right now, I would lean to Holmes. I think he's ahead of where Scott is, but you can't you can't argue against Scott looking fantastic the last couple of days. He has. He's had some real moments. Let's see what they both look like with a real game plan, not just your vanilla stuff. I want to see them tested. And so for those reasons, I know it's Hamilton, I know it's risky, but I want to see a real offensive game plan. I want to see them make difficult reads. I want to see them with some urgency and some pace. And so that's what I would ask for from Toronto's offense. Now, and defense, are you going to stick to that exact same plan that you gave us for Hamilton? That's your plan?
I mean, I think sort of counterintuitively, you can in preseason dial up the occasional exotic blitz that you don't plan on running during the season, just to, keep it interesting for the team and just to give them a look that you're never planning on doing again. So I would probably dial up a few exotic things just to see how they react to it.
I love mind games like that.
What's that?
I love mind games like that, like where you show something in preseason, knowing full well that people are watching that film. You have no intention
of running that blitz ever again.
Right.
And why not?
And you know that teams now have to prep for it. So for every following week, they're going to bust this out at some point. So let's be ready for it.
I would throw a couple of blitzes in, to try that to see what you have. My guess is that they're going to want to play relatively conservatively, because they're trying to evaluate these guys, and the bench guys can't run the stuff as well as the other guys. You're not looking to find bench guys who can be starters. You're trying to find who can be a bench guy. So I would think that you're probably looking to dial back the complexity and just see how those guys react in space, how they make a tackle when the ball is caught in front of them, how they react to run, those sort of fundamental things, and not worry about busts or them getting lost or not sure which play to run, which is likely to happen, and which really isn't that useful for you in terms of evaluation. I think you want to see what are their fundamentals, and so that's where I would probably just stay in like a cover two shell, and just kind of just play ball.
I think there's value in sort of diagnosing coachability, right? Like even the stuff you're talking about, while you may not necessarily go and run this or run this, seeing how a guy responds. You've instructed an X player to do this. How does he do it? How does he execute it? How well does he take instruction?
Not very well if he's not a starter.
No, but some of these guys will be. Like, there's a bunch of guys out there that, like, the practice squad guys, or the guys that are on the bubble of the practice squad. I do think, like I said earlier, I think there's a bunch of guys that I think you could already say, okay, this is not going to happen this year. Maybe down the road, but not this year. But I do think there are some where you want to really get them accustomed to the process too, of taking in new plays, taking in new concepts. Let's see how well you execute it. Let's analyze it on film over the next couple of weeks and see how you can improve on that, or on the way that you interpret my instruction, my language, whatever. I think there's some value in there, but we're really searching for meaning here with what you can put out there. But that's preseason, right? That's how it is. All right, it's time for one thing. JB, what is your one thing for this preseason game?
It feels like a shout out to last year, but even from a bit of the scrimmage, it sort of popped into my head as well. Is I would love to see the Argos be able to run the ball successfully inside the 20, to be able to run in a touchdown. Is something that they were not very good at last year. Now, it didn't stop them from winning the Grey Cup. So I take some of the heat off my frustration. But I have to believe on some level that is an important ability, to be able to turn field goals into touchdowns and not always have the pressure on the quarterback to throw this ball, especially if you have a young quarterback. Or a newer quarterback. You'd really love to be able to pound the ball in from the 5 and in. So I'd love to see a rushing touchdown. It is an area that has not been the strength. So I'd love to see that.
And we have seen that we saw that in the scrimmage, but again, that doesn't really mean as much. Like both Ouellette and Leak had rushing touchdowns. Leak's was sort of up the middle. Ouellette's was around the outside. But I don't know how much we can take away from that. But like you said, they got rushing touchdowns in the Grey Cup. They were able to pull it together late in the season. It was that Ryan Hunter ad that sort of changed them, right?
Well, that's it, right? So let's see if we can keep that going.
Yeah, and I think like for me, my one thing, and this is maybe something that I'm not going to get, but I want to see one of Ben Holmes or Brian Scott. I want to see one of them really separate themselves. So that's cheating a bit for one thing, because it's going to be a combination of several things. But I really want, after this game, for us to be able to say, going into the second preseason game, yeah, this guy is the number 2, because it's going to make it so much easier. The fewer question marks you have going into the second preseason game, the easier it's going to be to really make those difficult decisions elsewhere. It's so consuming right now in looking at those 2 quarterbacks and trying to figure out who the guy is. Let's decide that right now. It's real football. It's against a division rival, your crosstown rival or your hated rival. One of those guys has to step up and make plays and show that they're the guy. So that's my one thing for this week. And our last segment of the day, JB, this is more difficult than the usual prediction, but let's do our predictions for this game. How is this one going to end? I have no idea. I'm just going to say to start, but it's a segment that we do every time we preview a game, preseason or otherwise. Is this going to be one of those preseason games where nobody gets any points, or is this going to be, Calgary Edmonton from yesterday where it heats up late and the scoreboard is definitely rolling over?
Well, I think Hamilton is definitely going to try and win the game. I don't think the Argos have any interest in winning the game, which is the correct way to look at an exhibition game. But Hamilton, it's in Hamilton. They're coming. They're gunning for the Argos. I think you could easily see Hamilton putting up a pretty substantial victory, which won't mean anything except to a bunch of Hamilton losers. So I would say 28-14 Hamilton, which is not cause for crisis, and we can talk about how it's not a crisis next week.
I am going to go the other way on this. I think Coach Dinwiddie believes what you're saying, and I think because I agree with it too, that the game, the score doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're trying to evaluate players. That's all that matters. Especially you're on the road for this one. I think he believes that, and I believe that too philosophically. But when you get down there in that situation, it's really tough. Remember last year, in that meaningless Montreal game where the plan seemed to be to have Chad Kelly play the first half or the 3 quarters at most, and then seemed to be Ben Holmes coming in for the 4th quarter, but it was tight. It was a game. And it's so hard, that competitive nature in you when it's tight like that. And I think it's going to be because you've got those 3 other quarterbacks who are really good for one, but also fighting to the death for these spots. I think it's going to be a pretty tight game coming down the wire. And I think Coach Dinwiddie, this is what he does. Like he wins football games. That's what he does. He's got a great winning percentage in his 2 full seasons with the Argos. Look at what he's done. Winning a Grey Cup, finishing first in the East twice. He wins football games, and he's not going to be able to shut that off after 2.5 quarters when the Argos are down by 3 or 4 points. He's going to push it, and they're going to pull it out at the end. I think this is a tight one. I think it's 2017. Argos win this game.
All right.
Well, that will just about do it for us on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. We're going to have a post-game reaction podcast coming to you this week, our first of the season, as we start doubling it up for all the weeks that have games in them. We're always going to do our post-game reaction pod and then our preview pod for the following week. So make sure you look for us a late Saturday night. It'll be on your phone or on your computer early Sunday morning. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Together fight the foe, foe, foe.